Here we go, everyone. A quick lesson. This is video part 5B for the Friday rendering tutorial, and I want to show you how you can just render out an object really simple so that you can bring this into Photoshop and do some cool stuff with it. So I'm going to teach you how to do what's called an ambient occlusion pass, and I'm going to make you a really simple way of doing it so that you can show off any 3D model you want with a simple color and a simple look to it to make it look really good. So what an ambient occlusion pass is, it's kind of like passing over quick shadows over it as if the scene was lit in daytime. There's two ways to do it, and I'm going to show you one way quickly right now. We click on our, we have our main alien UFO here that I'm such an expert now at modeling UFO ships. And I'm going to go to my lights right here. So on your create panel, go to lights. I'm going to go to standard lights. And we played around with target spotlights and direct lights. There's an omni light. We actually have one called a skylight. So if I click on skylight, I can just add a skylight to my scene. Now, if you try and render out your scene right now, look what happens. Your model is completely whatever the solid color it is. So if it was green, it would be green. If it was white, it would be white. If it was blue, it would be blue. Now that's okay, because what a skylight does is it renders as if there was no shadows at all. It's rendering a very flat model. So if you want to do a cartoon model, and this would be a great way to test out the colors and everything like that, or if you just want to see the texture, this is a great way to easily do that just by dropping it in your scene. However, just like everything else in 3D Studio Max, it has parameters that we can check in the Modify panel. If we go to the Modify panel, you can see the Skylight has these parameters right here. Its lit multiplier is 1, which means default lighting. It's just set to 1 standard light. We can use a scene environment, or it can choose a sky color. Now, the sky color it thinks is the color that we want to render with is white, which is fine for now. We just want to do an ambient occlusion pass to show off some shadows and show off our model. We'll just leave it as white. You'll notice under render, there's cast shadows. It's turned off right now, but if we turn on cast shadows and we do a render, it'll actually render shadows now, and we can actually increase the quality, by upping up the amount of rays. The amount of rays is just how many times it will shoot like a fake laser sort of at the top of your model to render out the shadow detail, and we can increase that more and more. Try not to increase it too much. 20 is pretty good. You can go up to 40, but if you go any higher than that, I think it's just a waste of render time for something even as simple as 1920 by 1080. If you were working in 4K maybe, but right now in 1920 by 1080, we're just fine. We have one skylight in our scene. That's all we have. We turn on render cast shadows, leave everything else as default, and you'll notice what happens is that now we get a render. It takes a lot longer. Sorry about that. Your screen might show it as a completely solid color for just one moment. 1 second. So give it about 30 more seconds. There you go. It's popping in and out. It's giving me a nice high CPU warning right now. And but what we're seeing right now is that there's lights that drop down on top of our model that creates small shadows around the edges that we have in our 3D model to give the sense that our scene is being lit. And it's an automatic process. This is a great way to show off your model, whether or not it has any issues with the modeling. It doesn't really matter. It kind of skips over a lot of the bad things that are happening in the scene, and everything kind of works out just fine. Just give it about 30 more seconds and the render will be complete. It should pop up on your screen. There we go. So it popped up on your screen right now, and you can see what a difference between the original render and this render. Originally it was just green when there was no casting shadows, but now we have it with actually slight casted shadows, and it works really great for us. Later on in our lessons, I'm going to teach you how to actually bake these shadows into your actual texture map, so you have an automatic ambient occlusion pass on top of your 3D models. But while you're rendering, if you want to do this kind of effect, it's as simple as just putting a skylight and turning on the shadows, and you can lower the amount of rays to increase how fast it renders, or increase the amount of rays to add more detail to them to get that nice detail. Like I said, what it does is around the major edges of your 3D model, it adds like dark shadows that are nice and blurred out to give it a sense of ambient occlusion, give it this nice soft shadowed anti-alias feel. And it makes all models look good, whether or not they're low poly or high poly. The higher polygon, of course, it'll take more rendering time, but I think it also gives you a really nice effect as long as your models are modeled really, really well. And it's a great way to fake lots of like a really nice look. Like you can see how jagged my model looks, but with that nice soft lighting, it looked great. Don't forget in the Skylight parameters, you can also change if you want a sky color. If you want to change the color of the light that's coming down on top of it, you can change that. If you want to change the color of your model directly, you can just click on your actual model itself, click on the color here and change that model. And what I would normally recommend is to change it to white. Because if it's on white and you turn your Skylight cast shadows off, what you get is this nice black and white image like this. You save this image, and I'll show you an example too of how to do this. I'll save this just white image as alien ship, as a PNG with an alpha channel. I'm going to shave my cast shadows version. I'm going to lower the amount of rays right now just so it's a little faster for you guys. And while those rays are lowering, while the rays are rendering here, I'm going to open up Photoshop really quick. So what you should see, hopefully in a moment, there we go. We have our alien spaceship now rendered with the full shadows. We had our alien spaceship rendered with no shadows at all. And I'm saving them both as PNGs. One is alien ship, one is alien ship 2. And I opened the first Photoshop file, which is just the alien ship. Since I saved it as a PNG with an alpha channel in the background, it is completely transparent background and it's just the white alien ship. If I go to File Open and I open my alien ship 2, I get almost the same type of image, but with shadows on top of it. If you take one of these layers and grab it and drag it over to the other alien ship in Photoshop, make sure it lines up, you see we have a nice white version of our ship now, and the version with shadows. If I set that shadow layer version to multiply, I can actually draw between the white version of our ship and between the multiplied top version shadow of my ship in the layer between them two. So I'll name the top one AO, I'll name the bottom one base, and this one will be, let's say, color. If I wanted to just quickly color in a UFO, I can just right click on this layer, go to create clipping mask, which will clip it to the base layer, and now I can color it whatever color I want. I can change the property, like change the colors to whatever I need to make my scene work for me inside Photoshop. You'll often find a lot of the time, and this is no joke, that a lot of people actually grab their models, bring their renders in Photoshop, and do a lot of cleanup work. It's the same thing as doing photography. Photographs aren't perfect when you make them, and sometimes 3D models aren't either. So there's always touch-ups that are done in Photoshops to renders to make your models look 100% perfect. So I would do this. You know, you can add aliens in here. You can do whatever you want. That's my human. Good stuff. And this is an easy way to kind of like impress people with renders. You just render out a base. Remember, we just rendered out one base. We rendered out the ambient occlusion path, and between both of those, and made it a clipping mask of the base. We were able to draw in all the colors we need, and that came from the simple render of this. And then we can obviously go into Photoshop and go to crazy. We can add a background. We can add lighting effects. You can add a tractor beam inside here if you really don't want to make the tractor beam a 3D model. Then make it inside Photoshop if you have the skills to do so. Those are really important steps to learning more about rendering. We're going to be taking a whole week on rendering, along with unwrapping a whole couple of weeks. So don't feel stressed about it right now. More or less, I just want to see your farm scene. I want to see you have a camera in it, some lights, just to show that you're playing around with it and learning a thing or two about those types of setups inside 3D Studio Max. And we're going to be good from there. Don't forget your first assignment this week, creating the alien ship, adding detail, and then your larger assignment, which is working on the barn seat and adding detail to that, and have that in by Sunday. Thank you very much, and have a great week ahead.